Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Magnetic Podcast. Today, I'm really excited to have on Eddy Roche, founder of Dominate. Eddy, thank you so much for jumping on with us today.
Yeah, hey Jared, happy to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Our podcast, we're all about, exploring the kind of crazy marketing tactics that led to creating some of the most magnetic brands. And I think when I heard about Dominate, I was like, there's something special here. There's the community, there's the sort of bringing people together that love fitness. And so I wanted to have you on and kind of share with some of our audience how you built that. So I think first question I have for you is just if you could give the audience a little bit of background on yourself and what is, Dominate.
Yeah, for sure. I'll give you the quick version. So I was a high school dropout. I was an athlete. So I basically had an athletic career that was more or less a decade. Traveled all over the world, ended up back in LA when I was like 20 something, ended up working in tech for a little bit. And then when I was in my mid to late 20s, I had this realization that I wasn't really happy with where I was going with life. So I took a big step back and I asked myself, what am I most passionate about? And what, how do I want to spend my time and what's going to make me happy and where can I really contribute? And the answer was very obvious through that lens, and it was fitness. I was really passionate about fitness, and I've always been a people person. I've always been a very social person. I love people and I love fitness. So I resolved to build something in the fitness space. So I started a personal training brand. It started doing reasonably well here in West Los Angeles. I started a meal prep business, which was tied in with the personal training brand. We started serving healthy meals to my clients and then all of my buddies' clients. And then those two things were kind of growing, and I sort of had this second epiphany, which was that I wanted to do something that was really scalable and so that I could impact the maximum number of lives. Personal training is great, but you're sort of capped out at a certain number of clients, right? So I decided to do what at the time was going to be an outdoor F45, like an outdoor Orange Theory. Here in West Los Angeles, we've got beautiful weather year round. We get like rain 2 weeks out of the year. And I remember there were all these beautiful parks, beaches, and open spaces that weren't being utilized. I come from Australia, where if you go out to, the parks in Sydney, there's people doing fitness, there's people having picnics, there's people, playing with their families. And I found that in LA, that culture, for whatever reason, especially here in Santa Monica, it just wasn't that way, So I said, hey, we should go out and do like a beautiful outdoor workout community in the park. And so that's what we did. And we started Dominate. And we started doing these incredible outdoor workout experiences for small groups. And then the groups grew. And within like 6 weeks, we had like 100 people coming out on a Saturday morning to do these workouts in Ocean Park here in Santa Monica, West Los Angeles. And it took off. And then we sort of got organized and started getting more disciplined in our approach. And it really turned into a business. And now we've been at it for 4 years. And there's been all kinds of twists and turns. And one thing has led to another. But we've just recently opened what is now our flagship gym here on Main Street in Santa Monica. And we're aspiring to create the next generation Equinox. So we have an indoor component with indoor workouts. We have a beautiful indoor gym. We have a meal prep service. We have an outdoor, we call it a studio, but it's effectively a large park where we do outdoor workouts, 8 to 10 classes a day. And so we have a wonderful indoor-outdoor hybrid sort of model here happening. And we're looking to grow it and like I said, impact as many lives as possible.
That's awesome. I love that story. I think from someone that just walked outside in 12-degree weather this morning here in Dallas, which isn't normal, but certainly could appreciate if I could have done my workout outside. That would have been pretty awesome. Getting back to like you mentioned, you tried a few things. You worked in tech, and then you really wanted to pursue something you were passionate about. What about fitness? I know you're a former professional athlete, but is there anything about fitness where you were kind of like, hey, this is the world I want to just really dig into and dive into?
Yeah, let me think for a second. So I know the answer is just how to word it. Because it's so important to me. It's the number one, like throughout my life, and throughout everyone's lives, you go through ups and downs, right? And for me, every time I'm going through a down, whether it's in one form or another, right? This is earlier in my life when I was less mature. And then as I matured and I grew up, became a man, we all go through ups and downs. And for me, when someone's going through a down, the question is, how do you come back up? How do you fix that? How do you get out of that rut? How do you break free of that depression or anxiety or whatever it is? And for me, the answer has always been fitness. It's always been start with physical well-being. take care of yourself physically, check that box. And it's always been the case that everything else in life tends to follow suit. If you can just take care of that one thing. And this has been something it was made clear to me at a very young age. And I've been through that cycle over and over and over and over. And you know, now as a coach, I coach people through that, and I try to help people, you know, because fitness is just a starting point, but it's really an analogy. Like, it's analogous for everything else in life, because if you can develop discipline, if you can take care of yourself, if you can master yourself, master your own mind, master your own habits, routines, rituals, you can sort of begin this positive flywheel that will just, it'll transform a person's life, right? No matter what stage of life they're at. Like, if they can just take care of their fitness, it tends to be the case that happiness, fulfillment, self-esteem, confidence, all of these beautiful things follow. And so, again, that was made obvious to me at a young age. And it was just something that I internalized and I understood. And it's just really powerful. I've seen how fitness can be such a positive force in people's lives, whether they have an athletic background or not. You know, some people come at this middle-aged and they have no athletic background at all. And I'm teaching them this lesson for the first time in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, even beyond. But again, like, I was just very fortunate to learn how powerful fitness can be as a catalyst for positive change. And I learned that as a 14-year-old, 13-year-old, 15-year-old, 16-year-old, right? But that's sort of what I'm here to do. I'm here to help empower people and help them thrive and help them live their best lives. I think, Jared, there was one thing I didn't mention. Our mission at Dominate is to empower people to become their best selves and to live their best lives. Right. And so fitness is the vehicle or the catalyst for those things. But that's the end goal. It's to help people become the best version of themselves. And the fact is, if you're not taking care of your physical well-being, there's no way that you're your best self. Right. Like, that's the starting point. That's one of the first things you got to take care of. And just, there's so many beautiful, positive downstream effects, right, that come as a result of ticking that first box.
Yeah, that's really awesome. I mean, you're preaching to the choir to me, because this is something that I had to learn as well, and I think it really, like, started with sports for me as well. Like, that's where I got introduced to this idea of, like, taking care of your body, and finding discipline and, like, staying late, coming early. That's sort of like mental work of the process of, like, delayed gratification, and really investing in your body. It was like, I think for a lot of people that's just like a different idea, but we invest in other things in our life, like in abundance, but the body is sometimes looked at as like not a typical investment vehicle, when in fact it's probably the highest ROI you can have. So that definitely resonates with me. I just went on vacation last week, and I don't know if you sound like you're someone that's extremely routine and disciplined. So when I went on vacation, it just threw me. Like, I got back in today or yesterday, and my whole routine was out for a week, and I just felt like my whole body was like all over the place. So I was just super excited to just like get back in the gym, have the routine, because then the brain follows suit. I feel like you get it into a place where it's comfortable, and then the brain starts working again. So I love to hear that.
100%.
Really resonates with me. I want to talk about, as you started to grow this thing, you started from zero. You mentioned scale, like wanting to, as you transition from personal training and cooking to like, all right, how do I build like a real business around this that can scale? How do you take going from maybe your first initial clients that you had coming over from personal training to like 100 members? Like, how did you kind of do that?
Yeah, great question. This is probably it's funny, like, you know, when you start building a business and then things start working and then you get people naturally asking questions. This is the number one question I get. It's like, how did you build the community? Like, how did you do that? People seem to be really intrigued by this idea. So it's super simple for me. I think it's like, there's this great quote. I forget exactly. I'm paraphrasing here, but basically like 90% of a sale happens before the pitch, right? Like people, if you have something good to sell, people already know if they're going to, what's the way of wording it? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you build the brand and then make the ask, right? So my entire life, I've been a people person. I've been someone who makes people laugh. I've been someone who invests a lot of time and energy in, you know, social things, and like, and at different points, like at one point in my athletic career, I was less, you know, I was more of a monk, but like, generally speaking, I've been a people person. I've cultivated beautiful relationships, right, throughout my life. And so when it came time for me to grow Dominate, I literally, Jared, I sent out 150 text messages, like 3 nights in a row, every night before the events. So it was just text. It's that simple. I had all my friends in LA that I built, I built these friendships over 10 years plus of being in the city. Um, and I texted everyone and I said, "Hey, I'm going to do this incredible thing. Just trust me. Just come. Just come. Just it's going to be awesome. Just show up. Just show up." And I knew wholeheartedly, like if I could just get 20 or 30 of them to show up, I could put on a show and make it really fun and make it a great workout. And so that's what I did. I texted all my friends. I said, "You've got to come to this thing. It's going to be great." And then I'm on Instagram, and I never had a lot of followers or anything, but the few followers I did have, they saw me being really, really enthusiastic about this event I was doing, this workout event. And it started by, I didn't ask too much. It was like I did one event once a month to begin, right? Because you're never going to ask people to commit to a new thing that they have to do every day. But just to come to one event for 1 hour on a Saturday morning once a month, like that's not such a big ask. And of course, the first one came around and no one came. There was like one lady who showed up. Her name's Jill. She's fantastic. She's she's a regular now. Shout out Jill. And yeah, so we just kept doing that like once a month, and it was like it was 8 people, then it was 15 people, then it was 25 people, then it was 40 people, and then it had a bit of momentum. And then we started doing, instead of one workout on a Saturday morning, it was 2 workouts, and then it was 3 workouts. And so over the first like 3 or 4 months, we just gradually grew the group size until, we were turning, like there was 200 people coming every Saturday morning by like the 4th or 5th month. And you said, how did I do it? So it was text messaging, right? The question is like, how did I have people to text? So I was thankful, I was grateful to have friends, who I was texting. And if you can knock someone's socks off and give them a great experience, then they're gonna tell other people, and they're gonna want to bring their friends. Oh, there's this crazy guy doing these amazing workouts down at the beach. It's only $10. Like, why don't we go next month? It's such a fun way to start the day. And so there was a bit of a demand. Like there was a very, very lightweight version of product market fit where people were like, purchasing, enjoying it, and then bringing their friends. It was very organic.
Yeah, it sounds like to me there's an element of, before you started doing like the actions of a community, you were just living it, you were just being it, which I think a lot of brands listening can probably learn from. Of like, you want to start a community, start by just living out what you want the community to be. Naturally, people will flock to it, and then from there you can start doing the actual, hey, launching a little community meetup, right? It sounds like that was kind of what you did.
Yeah, 100%. That's a really keen insight. And thinking back, I've never articulated it that way, but it's true. Like since I was a young kid, my MO has always been to build everyone up. Like that's always been my thing. It's like, I really enjoy making my friends feel good. Like, all my buddies in high school, when they were getting their, they got into this school or that school, or they scored some like, internship at some big law firm or I was the guy on Facebook tagging them, blowing them up, being like, "I'm so proud of my boy," or like when my youngest, like it's always been in my DNA. And I look around, and it's a shame to say this, but I don't see a lot of other people doing that on the level that I do it. I've always been doing that. And maybe it was just the way I was raised. Maybe I just, I think I get a lot of gratification out of building people up and making them feel good about themselves. And I've always been that. And that's what we did every workout when people came. It was all about them. The fitness industry can be a little bit self-absorbed and a little bit elitist. And I was out there just making people, like all the people who came to the workout, they were the star of the show. It wasn't about me. And I made them feel, like people would come and they would have a workout and they would leave and they'd be radiating with this positive energy and this confidence after a 1-hour workout with me. And it's like, it sounds so simple because it's so intuitive and obvious to me, but a lot of other local fitness studios aren't executing on that level. And so, we made sure that when we attracted a team and we started delegating stuff and bringing in more, that they were those kinds of people who are happy to make other people the star of the show and to build them up and to make them feel good and give them a really warm welcome and make them feel, really great about themselves. And yeah, you called it out perfectly. Like that's why people were happy to come back, because they're like, oh, it's a positive for them. It's making them feel good. It's creating positive emotional response.
Knowing that that's so important, being the community and sort of living out the brand that you have and you want to live, and what makes you different is what attracts these people to you. And you mentioned you want to be, the next, I guess, your own Equinox that's a little bit different, because you brought up Equinox. I wanted to ask you, like, how do you take what you're doing with this place, with this community that you have now? How do you envision keeping that same level of, reaching across the table, shaking their hand, building that community, really having that personal touch, but at scale of, let's say, potentially hundreds of gyms across the country in the future?
Yeah. Great question. I get this one a lot too, behind closed doors. The short answer is it's going to be really difficult, right? I think every brand on some level has magic in the early days when it's like the founder is like working directly with clients or customers. And then as the brand scales, that gets diluted because it's like, how do you maintain that magic? And the simple answer for fitness is the same answer for other verticals. It's like, look, we're going to need excellent people who are made of the same fabric DNA that I'm made of, who understand the things that I understand and who intuitively, execute the same way I do and have the same values, right? So you have to hire a team that have the same values and ethics and all that. And then the second answer, which is interesting, and we probably, it's what's unique to Dominate is we're going to use technology. And I think there's a number of innovations just around the corner which are going to make scaling the level of service and personalization that we like to offer. The technologies which have nearly arrived, they're going to make scaling that sort of personalization possible for the first time. And so it's a general broad answer, but I think you can do it. I think you need wonderful people, just like any company, to scale it and maintain the magic. You need excellent people. You need a really tight SOPs. You need really, really tight quality assurance, quality controls, right? Multiple touch points, making sure that you're tracking and identifying issues before they get out of hand or you've, diluted your brand. It just comes down to having the right team and executing. And then I think you can use technology.
So if I'm a brand and I have potentially, because we have brands listening that have hundreds of thousands of customers, they don't necessarily know exactly where they live, but they want to start doing more events. But one of the things I always hear is, hey, we're so big, it doesn't scale with us. Like, we can't create that same level of personalization or connection that some of these smaller brands have. It sounds like you would maybe push back on that a little bit. Like, what would you say to those brands that kind of have that apprehension about jumping in and creating maybe some of these more community-driven events and experiences?
Yeah, I understand the question. I want to be careful not to pontificate. Like, if someone's got a massive distributed brand with hundreds of thousands of customers, like, they've got something that I haven't created yet. So I wouldn't be so arrogant as to think I should know what they should do. But that said, like, I think maybe you can latch on to local communities, like a fitness community, for example, like something I'm an expert in. So I'll speak to that. Fitness communities have an engaged audience of hundreds of local members who are coming to the gym multiple times per week. The gym owner knows all of the members personally. The trainer knows all of the members personally. They know their dogs' names. They know their relationship issues. They know their insecurities. It's a really intimate community, right? So if you're a bigger brand and you don't have that level of intimacy, but you have maybe a wider base of customers, maybe you can partner with local smaller businesses. Like, we see a lot of bigger brands now knocking on the door of Dominate, being like, hey, we see what you guys are doing. This is great. We'd love to get involved. Like, can we throw you some product, or can we sponsor an event, or could we collab on a social media marketing campaign, or, can we donate to this or that? So there's ways to collaborate maybe with some of the physical communities which exist that a brand might have access to. I'd have to think more about it, to be honest. I think that another thing I've seen is like look at what's worked for other brands, right? And then make it your own. But, if it's worked for another brand, maybe it'll work for you. So I'm sure that there's some massive e-commerce brands who are really crushing in this category. So it's like, okay, we'll analyze those successes and see what you can gain from that, and see if you can kind of do that in your own unique way. So it's not just a total ripoff, but it's like, but yeah, again, I'd be careful. Like, I'm not here to tell a nationwide e-commerce brand how they should run their community events.
Yeah, I think, and I appreciate that. I know a lot of people will kind of give answers, and so I appreciate you being candid about that. But I do think that at the end of the day, what you're creating at Dominate, right, that exists in every customer of every brand. And I think really what brands are trying to do right now, the biggest brands, I work with some really amazing and big brands that they have all these customers, but they don't necessarily know how do you cultivate these like very tight connections between each other. And so I think learning from small brands is often a great way to start, because like you said, I think these communities exist. And so you don't necessarily need to create your own. I think that's one thing that I've learned is you can find communities of similar people that love your product. And like you said, partner with them, cultivate those relationships, build relationships with smaller communities, and then eventually tying it back to the brand But I think that there's like, I think you'd be surprised at how many large companies right now are really keying in on some of these like really maybe small now, but like really passionate, pushing the needle on community, because that's where it's happening right now. These, you know, up and coming brands that are literally being built from their community. You guys, we've had some big brands that started out as just a small community. I think you're seeing like, we talk about this a lot, but like building the distribution first and then the product. I think you're going to see more and more of that, of people like yourself that are just like, hey, let me capture an audience that loves something. Let me help them create, you know, an amazing experience. And then I'll add a product in later. So like you guys, you know, the gym is the product, but initially, right, you created that kind of friend group, that distribution network before you actually launched the gym.
Yeah, 100%. And I still talk about the gym in that way. It's like the platform atop which we'll build like various businesses in the future, right? Like if we can scale a nationwide new fitness brand and that does something that's sufficiently differentiated from all the big box premium players, then you have an incredibly, you know, highly engaged community of wellness lovers that you can sell all kinds of things to. So it's like, you know, the gym model might seem like a pretty low margin business, but I'd like to think that there's ways to monetize it many decades from now, you know, if you can get there. And you made a great point. Yeah. And again, I'll speak to fitness because it's the one area where I consider myself at least not a total newbie. But like you see Nike doing this now, right? Nike, obviously one of the biggest brands in the world, are doing boutique fitness studios now, which is really interesting. Like, you know, a company like Nike don't bother with stuff unless like there's something there. So they understand the power of a true tight community of hundreds of active members. And then, you know, there's all kinds of ways that can benefit your business. But the community, putting the community first and investing in that is something that I think it's not a secret anymore, right? Like every brand is doing this now.
Yeah, I think brands are just getting smart. The 2080 rule is like so massive, I think, for this idea of community. This, like, the fact that there's a small subsect of people that just love what you do. And if you can find a way to foster that, harness that, and like let them run with it, that can be a massive lift. So brands like Nike, right, they understand that, where it's like, hey, this room of 10 people, tiny in the grand scheme of Nike, but if you can sort of harness that connection and community, that can quickly become a room of 100 people and that are just obsessed with Nike and becoming sales reps out in the, you know, I can't tell you how many times I've bumped into people that are just like, I refuse to wear anything but Nike. And it's like, why? It's like, well, I am Nike. And it's like, okay, that is something powerful that they've built. So they obviously understand, you know, how it's created.
Yeah.
So
yeah, 100%.
Let me ask you this. So you have one gym right now, correct?
That's right. Yeah, we have one gym here on Main Street, Santa Monica. It's a beautiful gym. It's about 8,500 square feet. So I'd say we're bigger than most gyms, but not quite as big as like your typical Equinox, for example. Looking to build some more.
So let me ask you this. So one thing I think Equinox does really well is they've found a way to scale outside of, so gyms, right? There is an element that's limited in terms of scalability with a gym just because it's a physical location. I work in software. So for me, that I can just turn the knob and we can get more software. For you guys, right? Like turning a knob and getting more gyms, that can be difficult. How do you think about scaling something like a physical gym location where maybe you can capture a large audience without necessarily hitting the like growth button on physical location, like new locations?
Yeah, so there's two-pronged answer. The first answer is before you even talk about how to scale anything in the gym industry, you get into fitness and wellness, Jared, because you really love fitness and wellness, right? Like I figured this out after about 12 months of running, because you might be naive at the beginning of your career as like a fitness entrepreneur and you might think like, I'm going to get really rich, right? You quickly realize that there are a million better ways to get rich, right? Like go back to school and go into tech, go back to school and go into finance, there's a million other ways if you want to build wealth, far more likely, likely ways of getting there. So the first part is you do this because you love this. Like it has to be a passion and it has to be a purpose. So it's a very purposeful existence for me. And yes, I'd like to build wealth, but I'm dead serious. Like I'm doing this because it's a purpose and it's a passion and I believe I'm the right person to do it. And I think I can really help a lot of people. And I think if you start there, you're going to be able to endure the hardships necessary to scale something in the brick and mortar fitness world. Because the reality is, Jared, it's really hard. It's really, really hard. And people underestimate just how hard it is. Like, you mentioned you're in software. Like, I've worked in software myself, so I've been able to sort of like get perspective on those two different worlds and how to build wealth in both sides. And yeah, to scale a gym business, it takes a long time. Barry's Bootcamp took 30 years to get to where they are today. Equinox have been around for decades. These companies have spent, God knows how much, but millions and millions and millions just to open one gym. You're looking at millions of dollars of upfront investment, right? So it's expensive, it's slow, it's hard. And in a world where investors are more sophisticated than ever, it's really hard to attract capital. So it's hard is the first part of my answer. It's really hard. And in order to be fired up about doing something really hard, you have to really love it, and you have to be doing it for some reason bigger than just wealth creation. So that's my first answer. My second answer is there is still plenty of space to innovate in the brick and mortar fitness world. We're seeing this right now. A lot of the more sophisticated fitness brands are going omni-channel. So it's like, yeah, great, you have a physical gym, great, you do physical workouts, but you can use software to reach a massive audience, or you can be projecting live workouts, or maybe you have recorded workouts and you can bank a library of content and people can carry it around in their pocket. And like, that's something that the more sophisticated fitness brands are keying into now and investing in. And then it's like, moving forward, how do you scale the physical business while also scaling the digital brand? Because I think the two are going to marry together and be feeding off of one another. A lot of investors tell me like, dude, just do software, just do an app, just, like shut the gym down. That's a bad business. But I disagree. I think that the Equinox of 20 years from today is going to have a sizable physical presence, as well as, and in marriage with, a massive online presence. And people want to be able to access the physical locations when it's convenient for them. And they also need that second option of having a workout to go in their pocket, or whether it's an AI trainer or something that's, coaching them on what to eat, or, breath work at the office, like all that stuff, right? I think that there's not one brand that's really captured all of these things together. It's very, very, it's just, there's a lot of opportunity, put it that way. No one's really built the next Equinox yet. There's a lot of people trying to do it. But yeah, I think that's the answer. So it has to be a two-pronged approach. You have to love it because the physical part is really hard. It's capital intensive. And just attracting the capital, let alone deploying it sensibly and then making a return. These are incredibly difficult tasks. And the other thing I've learned, Jared, this is maybe getting into like the business side of things, but like sometimes when things are really, really, really hard, no one wants to go after them. So like I'm seeing a lot of people go into software right now, or like, there was SaaS. Everyone wanted to do SaaS. Like all the smart people were doing SaaS. Like I'm yet to meet an entrepreneur who's trying to do what I'm doing. I haven't met one yet. Because it's almost like so difficult. Why would you try? Like if you were smart enough, why not just go build a SaaS, right? Or like some B2B SaaS that services gyms, or just do this or just do that. So I'm really fired up about doing the hard thing. Like as someone who was a triathlete, like I enjoy hard things. Like the fact that it's really hard and everyone thinks I can't do it, that gets me out of bed in the morning. I'm stoked.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think gyms, and so my like I don't know a lot about gyms, but I do know a lot about sort of like retail and e-commerce. And I think it's interesting that you mentioned sort of this world we're moving towards, which is merging sort of the physical and digital. And I think there was a lot of people in retail, especially as like COVID hit, where people were like, oh, like retail's dead. Movie theaters are dead. Everything's online. Everything's virtual reality. And I think like what's so interesting is post-COVID, and a lot on this podcast, we talk about it because a lot of what we talk about in this podcast is magnetic brands, and what magnetic brands do, all of them across the board, is find ways to connect with their audience beyond just digital connections and physical. And that's usually physical. And so I think what you're seeing in like retail is we had this massive shift to digital where everybody's like, how do I, this digital transformation, everything's moving online, making everything digital experience software. But I think now what you're seeing is like people are now, it's so competitive digitally. It's like, how do you stand out in a world where everything's just easy and commoditized? Software's commoditized. AI is making everything commoditized. And I think now you're seeing brands like, okay, well, we need to have a location so we can actually meet these people and create these communities. So I think you have the right mindset. I think that's exactly what brands of the future will do really well, is they'll have places where people can like just come together and connect. And then they'll have places where when they're not able to do that, they can still connect digitally. So wanted to call that out because I think that mirrors a lot of what's happening with retail.
Yeah, for sure. I agree with you wholeheartedly. I think there's a lot of hype. I think like intellectual people and business minded people, they tend to get bored. They get sucked into hype and they try to over determine some little thing that's happening and then extrapolate it out and be like, oh, like, physical is over, like in real life communities are over. Like, mate, what are you saying? Like, what did you do last Friday? You all went out for drinks with your friends. You went out to dinner. Like, people are people. Like, we're not going to stop being people. Like, you're right. AI will commoditize a lot of this stuff. Um, but like people get carried away with these trends. Like when COVID hit and everyone was like, "Oh, no one's going to a gym ever again." I was like laughing. I was like, "Are you kidding? Like, are you jokers really think that people aren't going to want to go and work out together? Like, it's the best hour of their day, and they're just going to drop that forever because, like it was awful, obviously, and there was a number of challenges that we were presented with. But presuming that we got through those things, which we did, it was always the case that people were going to go back to gyms. And yes, the world's changed, but people just get carried away with some of these trends and predictions and like, you know what I mean? It's just hype. Like people are always going to want to have fun with other people, always, whether that's a workout or a restaurant or anything.
Yeah. And I think the second that stops happening is like the second I'm not going to be super into what's happening if we stop wanting that stuff. Like that's not a world that I'm interested in. So I hope that never happens because that just sounds awful.
Right.
And
yeah, I think,
I was going to say anybody that's also on the work from the, cause I remember the COVID times, everybody was doing working out from home. And I had one of those bands. I feel like they just were flying off the shelf. Those like pop it into the door frame, close it. And then it's got the different strength bands and
TRX.
the TRX bands. And it was like anybody that's gone through that knew that like the second gyms were open, just breaking down the doors because the amount of times where I had one of those things like fly off and just drill me in the chest or like I had no interest in, doing that forever. So.
Yeah, that was a shocking. I mean, I felt like, anyway, it was shocking. There was a lot of hype.
So I want to get into sort of like when you're growing this brand and you mentioned this is a hard industry. I'm curious if you have any stories around like maybe just some like, hey, this was like a horror story when it came to like building this thing that maybe you can fill us in on.
How long do we have? It's been one. I mean, I know that this is every entrepreneur's journey, and I know that all startups are faced with existential crises. But for us, it's been one after another, and almost comical. Like we've literally tried there's been public challenges, and then there's been plenty of private challenges that we still can't talk about, and that maybe I'll write a book out about one day. But some of them are pretty jaw dropping, like things that people have done to us or horrible things which have happened to us. And that's all part and parcel of building a business, right? Like it's risky, it's inherently difficult. Like, I'll pick one that's on the more comical side. And we tried to make light of this, but basically we were running outdoor workouts, right, Jared? So our business was dependent upon the sun shining and us having a beautiful venue to host our sessions. And last year in January, or I should say 2 years ago in December, it rained for like half the month. So we had to shut down classes for like 2 weeks. It was the longest time we'd ever actually been shut down in our company's history due to bad weather. And finally, it was like January 3rd or something, and we finally had some sunshine. So the team and I are all fired up. Everyone's like, ready to crush. It's January 3rd. The community's all excited. So we get up at like 4 o'clock in the morning. We drive to our parking lot where we store our van. Our company vehicle had all of our equipment in it. And we would drive the van down to the park and we'd build this incredible gym. And the van's not there. And we're like, oh no, where's the van? Like, what's going on? So we're like calling everyone, going like, where's the van, guys? And I was in total disbelief. But long story short, someone had come to the parking lot and stolen our vehicle. And it was like, you imagine like, it's a small business, but like, it's a meaningful amount of revenue that we lost, right? So the van was gone missing. There was like well above 6 figures worth of electronics and equipment in the van. Some of it was insured, some of it wasn't. So it was a massive hit to our balance sheet. And then we didn't have any equipment, so we couldn't run workouts. And there was a shout out to the few diehards who came out and did body weight workouts with us for a few days and just wanted to support us. And we had a massive outpouring of support from the community. But, most people just cancel their memberships and just say, oh, tough luck. And it was incredibly difficult. It was very stressful. So we tried to replace the van, replace the equipment, get back out there. And basically for the following, let's call it 4 months, Santa Monica had the wettest, rainiest and coldest and windiest winter that it had seen in like 30 years. So it's just one thing after another, after another, after another. So Q1, Q2 of 2023 was down like 60% for us versus the year before, which as like, you know, a startup that's telling this like growth story to like all these investors, like, mate, all of our lines of credit got pulled, like investors backed out, like people stopped answering my messages. Like it was really hard. And we, during that time we were building our gym. So that was the one thing that kept us excited. But, it was just it was a massive challenge to build out the facility that we have here, when cash was so tight and when our revenue had gone to zero. And, you know, this is a small example of like a horror story, that something that happened to us. And yeah, it's all part of building a startup, but it was really hard year.
I feel like next time I'm in LA, I'm definitely gonna want the full version because I feel like that's a crazy, crazy story. And I know you kind of got to, you were like,
Yeah.
hey, we're at the rock bottom, but then obviously you're here, so like
Yeah.
I'm sure there's a lot that went into like the back and uptick.
Yeah.
I think what's really cool about your story is like for me, I don't know the, you know, your world. I do understand the challenges of a business, and for me, like the weather is more so of like we went through just the most insane because our company originally we incorporated NFTs into our product, and I'm sure you know like NFTs like just completely disappeared off the face of the earth. And so like I had to take like a really hard look at our business and be like, hey, this technology that we're building on, people want nothing to do with it. And so I can sympathize with like, you know, your oh crap moment of like, you have to take a hard look at yourself and be like, hey, do I really, you know, do I really want this? Do I really believe in it? Because I could, you know, I'm sure you have things that you could go do that make more money, be less stressed, lose
Yes.
less hair, have better relationships potentially. So it's great to hear that.
Yes. Yes. Check, 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 check. Yeah. No, 100%, mate. Yep. It was hard. And I've had so many moments in the last 4 or 5 years that I'm grateful for them now,
Yeah.
obviously. But it's just like I've answered all the questions that I needed to answer for myself. Like I've got nothing to prove to myself anymore. Like I'm doing this because it's my purpose, and I know that it's what I'm supposed to do, and I think I'm the right person to build this company. And I know that most people think it's crazy, and they think the way I live is crazy, and even my closest loved ones, right? Like they think that the amount of sacrifice that I endure is unreasonable, and it's very lonely. Like, you know, all the above, all the solopreneurs can relate. But dude, I get, you know, what fuels me is that I've found something which is authentically what I'm here to do. Like it's truly a purpose, and it's truly something that, I'm at peace with, is the life I've chosen for myself. And I really love it. And I do have moments of incredible gratification, Jared, on a weekly basis. Because we're changing lives. And I know that's so cheesy, and I know that every, you know, brand says that, but like how many entrepreneurs, like I mean, I've got a drawer with letters like this thick back at home with people writing in saying, Eddie, thanks to Dominate, like I would have turned to alcoholism during this period of my life, but you saved me. Or thank, you know, all my friends are asking me what's gotten into me. I've dropped 20 pounds and I just feel the best I've ever felt. Or I had a lady in my office crying last week telling me she's just so, you know, like, I mean, it's again and again and again and again and again. And then that's just the people in the community. Then there's the team, right? Like building a team, you're empowering young people to find their purpose and find their mission. And, you know, I'm instilling now these values that I've always known are, you know, things I'm capable of. I'm instilling those values in my team members, and I'm seeing them grow into these incredible men. And it's like, I get so much back from this pursuit, and it's not just about the money. And I do believe, by the way, like the wealth will come, like wealth creation. Like if you zoom out, it's a wealth creation game. But if you zoom in, it looks like I'm living a life of service, you know, because I'm just like, I'm serving a bunch of customers who are like getting an incredible value, like getting an incredible product. I'm serving a bunch of, you know, employees who are being well taken care of. And it's like, it looks like service. But then if you zoom out, it's like, oh no, it's wealth creation, because that's how you build a great brand. Like you have to create value for everyone. You have to get, you know, you have to go hard every single day and create immense value for lots of people. And so it's both, you know. I think if you can create an amazing product or service at a great value proposition for people, and you can do that again and again and again and again, and create value for your team and for your clients, then, you know, zoom out and you can do that for 10 years, like you'll create something that's valuable.
Yeah, it's so cool to hear you talk about the letters, because B2B, right? Selling to businesses, your metrics, your KPIs are like, hey, am I making our customers money? Am I saving them time and money? What's so cool about you is like your metrics, your KPIs, obviously you have revenue metrics and KPIs, but your outcomes that you're looking for are, hey, this guy's life was changed. Hey, this guy lost 80 pounds and isn't going to the hospital. Hey, this guy's body is now prepared to fight the sickness he's going to have in 2 years that he has no idea about. I think that's awesome, man. I definitely commend you for that. I think you are in the heart. It sounds like just in like the hardest space to be in, but it's nice that you have maybe some feedback loops that kind of like keep you motivated.
100%. Yeah, you nailed it. And anyone who works in wellness and fitness is very, very fortunate in this regard because, it is incredibly motivating. But like, if you can help, elicit positive changes in people's lives, you're transforming their lives. And if you're doing that, you're going to be making more money. And if you're making more money, it means that you're transforming more lives. So it's like being in the business of selling services or products which help enable them to be more, happy, healthy, fit, achieve wellness. It's a beautiful virtuous cycle, right? And 100% nailed it. And I think it's a lot of people in this space, they key into that, and it gives you a purpose, and it gives you it can keep the fire hot, on the days when you look at the business and you're like, this business sucks. Like, this is so much hard work for this little itty bitty bit of, if that, most gyms, it's pretty embarrassing. You can go do a quick Google search on the average, profit of a gym. Like, most of them lose money, and, there's a lot of turnover, and it's a hard business, so you've got to be doing it for more than just the money.
So looking forward a little bit, and I'm really curious on your perspective on sort of the future of fitness, the fitness industry. And I already know part of this answer is probably going to be that it's going to be a lot of the same, but I'm curious if you could look forward 5 years, like how do you envision the future of fitness, wellness, well-being in your space, particularly, how do you envision that changing or staying the same?
So I think one of the biggest themes, I think there's a lot of really positive trends that we're at the very, very, very beginning of right now, right? Like you see like major brands or like some of the biggest companies in the world, like Apple, for example, they're starting to help like get into health, right? Like I think we all recognize like as a society, we have massive issues. We have a mental health crisis and we have a physical health crisis. These two, like we already know the answers to these. We have the technologies to solve these problems. It's not a lack of, having the solution. It's an implementation problem, right? It's like, why do we have the solutions, but people aren't choosing them? So it's like, okay, we have to teach and educate society that like living a healthy lifestyle can be enjoyable, because a lot of people wrongly associate being healthy and fit with pain or with sacrifice or with suffering. And that's not the case at all. It's completely backwards. Being healthy and fit is more fun. Like looking great, feeling great, being your best. It's more fun. It's more enjoyable. Eating healthy food, it's more delicious. It's more enjoyable than eating junk food. Like this is just it's an education thing. So, there's some positive trends in that regard. I see that a lot of brands are like big tech brands are starting to help people track healthy habits, starting with like steps per day, right? HRV, blood oxygen, like, so there needs to be more education for people to understand, how beneficial healthy habits can be for them, and that it's not necessarily a game of, oh, I have to trade happiness, or I have to trade sleep, or I have to trade the foods I love. No, you don't. Actually, living a happier, healthier lifestyle is better in all those areas. So anyway, the major trend I was going to talk about was personalization. So I think with technology now, we're going to be able to understand and track and measure things which are happening with our own mental and physical health. And then there should be more tools moving forward that educate people on what to do and when to do it, and hopefully guiding a person to be a happier, fitter person, and taking a more personalized approach. Because, like go on YouTube and type in fitness this or that, and you're going to get some hardcore workout that's intimidating for most people. Like most people are intimidated by gyms, even gyms like Dominate, which our MO, Jared, is being the most warm, welcoming, friendly, couldn't be less intimidating, right? And yet still the average person walking by is terrified to walk into the gym. Most people are very, very, again, we have a mental health crisis and a physical health crisis. So most people have, are an expression of those two things. They have average or poor mental health, and they have average or poor physical health. So in order to convert those people and bring them to the light, there have to be less intimidating, or there has to be education, and there has to be a more personalized approach that takes a multi-step approach to health and wellness. And it can't be one size fits all. It can't be one workout for all. It has to be, hey, let's just start with healthy food, or let's just start with increasing our steps, or let's just start with a little bit of yoga in the living room. So anyway, I see a lot of those trends starting to formulate and starting to happen, which is really encouraging. But yeah, we've got so much upside, like so much room for improving people's mental and physical health as a society. It's one of the largest opportunities I see in the world, period, full stop. Which is why, by the way, companies like Apple, who are the most sophisticated and well-resourced brands, that's why they're building the plumbing for addressing these opportunities.
Yeah, I think you're 100%. As someone who's like, my whole family is obsessed with wellness and fitness. My sister has a cooking business. My mom is all into like wellness. She has like a hair analysis business. It's crazy. We'll have to catch up with some time on some of this stuff, because I think you'd be interested in it.
Yeah, I'd love to.
But it's so cool because health, I think in my world, I deal with loyalty, which the word loyalty I don't necessarily like, because I don't want brands to think we're we turn on loyalty. Loyalty is a lot like health, I think. Like, just hearing you talk about health and wellness, it's not something you turn on. It's the byproduct of your decisions and everything that you do when it comes to your body. Loyalty is the exact same way. Like, I think brands are like, hey, Nifty Bridge, come in and turn loyalty on. It's like, no, that is not what loyalty is. Like, loyalty is a byproduct of how you treat your customers, how great your product is, the experiences that you craft. So I think that, like, there's a lesson to be learned here for anybody of, your health and wellness is the perfect model of, there's not a one size fits all. And ultimately your focus, as for you guys, is just about how do you help them make the right choice in all these different areas, as opposed to like turning a key and, boom, I'm skinny, or boom, I feel amazing. That's just not how it works. Just like brands, boom, I have loyal customers. So I think that's really interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. Jared, I never got to ask you. Just curious, what was your sport?
Lacrosse. Yeah.
Oh, cool. That's right on. Okay, actually, I did know that.
Yeah, how about you?
Lacrosse. Cool. So I was a triathlete.
Oh, that's right. Okay, yeah, because I heard
I did triathlon.
That's crazy. My buddy did a triathlon. He asked me to do it with him, and I looked up on the internet kind of like what was involved. So I know I commend you, man. I think for me it was the swim. I could definitely bike and run, but man, I need some work on the swimming. So maybe one day. I got to get up to LA more often.
Yeah, anytime you come through, obviously love to have you come work out at the gym.
That would be awesome. So quick hitters before we go. I know we're running up on time, but I wanted to make sure I got, because we're at the beginning of the new year. So I always like to ask, biggest thing you learned from last year, and then the one thing you're most excited about for this year.
Okay, biggest thing I learned from last year. There's this great quote I love. I don't know if Michael Phelps originated it, but he was the one who said it, and then it got quoted. He got quoted. But it takes what it takes. I keep having this realization as an entrepreneur, like it's everything. Like it's actually going to take everything for me to get to where I want to go. And every time I think I can give anything less than 100%, I'm reminded, like, no, like it's going to be 100%, every single thing. And so last year was the perfect, it just summarized that so perfectly for me. So it was like, I sort of, the universe kind of demonstrated to me and showed me like, hey, like if you want this, it's going to be everything. You can't, there's no free lunch. So it was a tough year, but it was a beautiful year, because if you get through those challenges, you get through them onto the other side, you're filled with so much self-esteem and confidence, because you really know who you are, and you really know commitment is, people are afraid of commitment, but commitment will set you free. Because once you're 100% committed to something, you've already made the decision. There's no more decisions left to make. It's just, it takes what it takes, whatever it takes. It's like, once you're that level of committed, like, it's like, there's no more decisions. It's just, it takes what it takes. You just do whatever it takes. So that was last year for me, if I had to summarize. And then something I'm looking forward to this year. I'll be honest with you, Jared. I'm the most passionate athlete I've ever met. Like I've trained with Olympic gold medalists. I've trained with 4-time, 5-time world champions. I've trained all over the world in various sports. I've been to the Olympic Training Center. I've rubbed shoulders with some of the greatest of all time in various sports, and I've met these guys and I've hung out with them and I've been able to sort of get inside their heads and figure out. And one thing I learned about myself is I was never even close to that level of athlete. I mean, I don't have that kind of talent, but one thing I do have is a bizarre amount of passion. I'm the most passionate person. Like, I think I know. I really mean that. I was more passionate about their sports than even some of them, even though they were 10 times the athlete that I was. And so I've learned that I just really, really love this stuff. Like, I really love fitness, right? And so the thing I'm most excited about, Jared, is now we've built the most beautiful gym on the west side. And selfishly, I get out of bed and I spring out of bed at 3:15 a.m. because I cannot wait to have my pre-workout and to come down to Main Street. And I come in here and I open the gym by myself at 4 a.m. and I get after it for like 90 minutes, 2 hours. And I do it every day, 7 days a week. And that is like what everyone's chasing. People are chasing true fulfillment, true peace, true happiness. And for 2 hours a day, I have that. And it's working out in my gym here on Main Street. I can't tell you how happy it makes me and how much joy it gives me. So, you know, if that's all I ever achieved, mate, it was worth it. Like, it's just such a beautiful way to start the day. And then the day starts and it's stressful and it's hard and all the other shit happens. And, you know, work is really hard. But for 2 hours every morning, I have my own little slice of heaven here on Main Street. And so that's the first year. This is the first year since we opened the gym that I have that. I've been working towards that for so long. I've never had a gym to call my own. So I'm very, very excited just to be able to continue that and to have that time for myself. You know, it's a level of mental peace and it's a level of prosperity. It's not prosperity in the sense that it's material wealth, but it's prosperity in the sense that I have something that I've created, that I've earned, and I really enjoy it. I really relish in it every single morning. And so to continue doing that this year is what I'm most excited for.
That's awesome, man. I think I'm gonna have to get Jake to chop up that last part, and if I'm ever just waking up in the morning and just like down, I'm just gonna rip that on my speakers, and I'm gonna be like, "All right, like here we go, we got this." So, dude, I might go to the gym this afternoon. I'm not even kidding. So thank you so much,
mate.
Thank you so much for jumping on here. Before we go, because I know I don't want to keep you over the hour. Where can people find you? They want to support you. They hear this podcast, they're like, this guy's insane. Like, I want to follow him. I want to support him. Where can they do that? Where's the best place to do that?
Yeah, that's really kind of you, bro. So come to Dominate first and foremost. So if you ever find yourself in West Los Angeles, come and check out Dominate. We're the fastest growing, just the coolest gym you'll ever walk into, right? You're going to love it. Come and check it out. It's on Main Street in Santa Monica, DMN8. You can find us on Instagram, DMN8_gym. Dominate Gym. And my Instagram is very simply at You're Dominating, like You're Dominating, YOURE dominating. And yeah, I'm not really too active on online, but I've been getting more into Instagram lately and posting more clips for fitness tips, nutrition tips, do's and don'ts, and hopefully little clips that motivate people. And especially I'd love to inspire the next generation of young people to chase their dreams and to live in alignment with, you know, their purpose.